Disney Company is known for making brilliant films, paying attention to detail, and doing their research, most of the time. We have to remember the people at Disney are only human, so they aren't immune to error, be it with facts, continuity, or animation. Animation is a tricky medium to work with. You get total creative control, but that also means you get total human error, and some things are easy to overlook. They may not be perfect, but we still love Disney, and if you love them as much as we do, you should make sure to hit that subscribe button to keep up to date with our new videos on Disney, from infinity to beyond. Before we begin, can you guess the film from these emojis? Stay tuned until the end of the video to find out.
Don't you think we're getting a little old for these games?
Pocahontas. As far as Disney films go, Pocahontas is better known for its mistakes than anything else in the film. After Pocahontas' father captures John Smith, he's guarded by members of the tribe to be executed the following morning. She and Nakoma go to see him and try to rescue him. They walk the entire way hand in hand, but apparently their shadows weren't informed because they aren't holding hands. But these little animation mistakes aren't even the worst of it. It's best known for its historical inaccuracies. Considering the film is based on a real woman, it only resembles her life in super speedy passing. Since we had to mention it, here's a quick history lesson for anyone who's curious. When she met John Smith and his colony, she was only around 10 or 11 years old, and the pair were never romantically involved. Later on, she married an Englishman, changed her name to Rebecca, and moved to England with him. She died there of smallpox when she was in her early 20s. That being said, we don't watch Disney films for their historical accuracy.
No one will listen.
Huh? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you say something?
Mushu.
Hey, you're a girl again, remember?
Mulan. Mulan had a serious issue with ink. China is famed for the amazing artwork made using the stuff, but during its appearance at the start of Mulan, it proved to be a total pain to animate. The joke, which ran through the course of the matchmaker scene, proved tough to keep up with. In preparation for her visit from the matchmaker, Mulan writes the final admonition in her arm. Just after she first does this, she lets out little brother, and the writing has vanished. She hides the writing under her sleeve. When she recites the admonition to the matchmaker, she grabs Mulan's arm directly on the ink, resulting in her palm being covered in ink. If the ink was really that wet, it would have been illegible from rubbing on Mulan's sleeve, and let's be honest, the dress would be ruined. The matchmaker instructs Mulan to pour tea. As she passes the teapot to Mulan, no ink rubs off onto it, yet moments later she manages to draw a beard on herself. As well as that, when a cup of tea is accidentally thrown into her face, the ink stays put. But when Mulan throws the whole pot at her, somehow putting out the fire on her backside, the ink runs. Cinderella. A major driving force behind the plot to Cinderella is the fairy godmother bibbidi-bobbidi-booing Cinderella into a pretty new gown and glass shoes so that she can go to the royal ball to find the prince a wife. As such, you'd have thought that we'd be a little bit more open to ignoring any costume blunders, but there are two which are just a lot harder to overlook. At the end of the film, Cinderella tried on the shoe she didn't lose, but there shouldn't have even been a glass slipper to try on. Everything was meant to revert back to normal at midnight. The shoes were the only thing that didn't. They were also a perfect fit, meaning, realistically, they shouldn't have been able to fall off in the first place. To make it worse, she loses her shoe to the same stairs on her wedding day, so maybe it's just an architecture issue. Speaking of her wedding, Cinderella's dress changes without explanation. The dress clearly has long sleeves for most of the scene, but it changes between shots. As their bridal carriage departs, they become short, puffy sleeves, more in line with the design of her classic ball gown.
Now, as long as you're just hanging there, pay attention. The only rules that really matter are these. What a man can do, and what a man can't do.
Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. When Disney makes historical mistakes in their animated films, it's a lot easier to overlook them than when they're made in their live-action films. And the Pirates of the Caribbean series is full of historical inaccuracies and mistakes, especially in Curse of the Black Pearl. Navy Officer Norrington has orders which are signed by George R., meaning that George I was sat on the English throne when the film takes place. This means it takes place somewhere between 1714 and 1727. It's repeatedly mentioned that the crew of the cursed Black Pearl ship have been on their quest for a decade, but when the ship first appears in the opening sequence, it's carrying the arms of William III. He ruled until 1702. There was a 12-year gap between both kings' reigns, between which England had Queen Anne. It was at least 12 years since the ship set sail. The start of the film is meant to take place at the start of the 17th century, meaning it was probably even longer, closer to 15 years. Either that, or the makers of Pirates of the Caribbean just have no clue about how the English royal family worked in the 18th century.
No, all together, now!
Toy Story. Buzz Lightyear is a central character in the Toy Story franchise, but he does cause some continuity errors, especially for the first film. Buzz genuinely believes he's a space ranger, and it isn't just him either. It seems to be a fault with all Buzz Lightyear toys. In Toy Story 2, a newer model believes he's a real space ranger and that Buzz is a bad one. He then traps Buzz in a box. Buzz only accepts that he's a toy after he's trapped in Sid's house and sees his advert come on the TV, leading to a bit of an existential crisis. If he believes he's not a toy, it opens up a few cans of worms. The rest of Andy's toys are all aware they are toys, so it makes sense when when they fall to the floor or freeze when a human is around. But why does Buzz? We know it's probably just because it causes less problems in the story. It's easier to have Buzz fall to the floor like a toy when humans aren't meant to know that the toys are alive. It can be difficult to run with two ideas which contradict each other, but it does make things a little weird to watch. Tarzan. Set sometime toward the end of the 1800s, Tarzan is about a young man who's raised from infancy by a group of gorillas after his parents are killed by a leopard. Somewhere between 20 and 30 years later, English explorers arrive in the jungle to study the gorillas, including Professor Porter and his daughter Jane and the hunter Clayton. The explorers find Tarzan and realize the importance of their find. Clayton tries to convince Tarzan to lead them to the gorillas' habitat so he can return to London and make money off of them. But Porter and Jane see the scientific and social importance of Tarzan and suggest taking him back to England to meet Queen Victoria, Charles Darwin, and Rudyard Kipling. The English queen, a biologist who was the leading mind on evolution, and the author of The Jungle Book are three people who would find Tarzan's discovery the most interesting. But the dates don't add up. Darwin died in 1882, a whole 12 years before Kipling even penned The Jungle Book. In fact, at the time when Darwin died, Kipling was only 16 and at school. The mistake makes it even harder for fans to work out when the film was even set. Hercules. Disney took a lot of creative liberties when they were making Hercules. Aside from a few references to gods and heroes, the film bears no more than a passing resemblance to the original Greek myth. As fun as the film is, it's not the best to take a lesson on mythology from. Because of the time period, ancient Greek and Roman stuff gets mashed up a lot. Think Greco-Roman. And that is exactly what happened with Hercules. The film is definitely set in ancient Greece. Them being in Greece is mentioned a few times, including Hercules calling himself the most famous person in Greece. Most of the characters' names are pulled right out of the myths, like Zeus, Hera, and Hades. But a lot of stuff is Roman, starting with the hero Hercules himself. Hercules is his name in Roman mythology. In the Greek myth, his name is Heracles. The change was probably made because people are more aware of Hercules, and it made the film easier to market. It's weird when everything else is so clearly Greek. That being said, it's not the only Roman element which was chosen over the Greek one. Numbers are all in Roman numerals, but the Greeks had their own number system. Alice in Wonderland. It's pretty tricky to pin down mistakes in a film like Alice in Wonderland. It works under dream logic, so nothing makes sense. Up is down, and mistakes are probably not mistakes at all. There was one little mistake we found though. Eat me, drink me is a huge element of the story. For those who aren't aware, it's the items she eats and drinks, mainly in the form of potions, mushrooms, and cake, that cause Alice's size to constantly fluctuate during the film. Most of the time, her height changes because it's meant to, but sometimes Alice and her surroundings change size between shots when they aren't meant to. It happens a lot, but one scene stands out. When Alice is a giant in the forest, she's holding two pieces of mushroom. Because of her size, the mushroom pieces should be quite small, as they don't change size with her, but they're disproportionately large. When she shrinks back to her ordinary height, the mushroom pieces are quite small. As well as the size of the mushrooms, at her normal height, they appear to be completely untouched, despite the fact that both pieces have been eaten from.
The cold never bothered me anyway.
Frozen. 4 years after Frozen was first released, the film is still everywhere, and it's still giving us plenty of stuff to talk about. As the film is coming to an end, Anna is close to dying of a frozen heart, and Hans is out of the frozen water with Elsa. He tells her she's responsible for killing Anna, and as she collapses to the floor, he draws his sword out of nowhere. From a distance, there is a faint shape on his back which could have been his sword, but it's unclear. There doesn't seem to be a scabbard in sight. If he's been keeping his sword on his back, we want to know how, and have someone point out how inconvenient and dangerous that is. And if not, well, we really don't want to know where he pulled that sword from. As he goes to kill Elsa, Anna throws herself between the pair of them. The sword hits her just as she turns into ice. His sword shatters when it hits her, and he's thrown backwards, just about missing a piece of ice which appeared out of nowhere.
Voila! Oh, you look so
stupid.
Beauty and the Beast. As much as we love Beauty and the Beast, it does present us with some troubling math problems. His age is hotly debated, but he seems to be a teenager. The curse put on Prince Adam and his castle by the Enchantress was pretty ruthless. The young prince had opened the door to her during a storm and refused her shelter. As mean as it was to refuse, she cursed an entire castle because a teenager was rude to her. We hope she doesn't have any kids of her own. What sort of person turns a teenager into a beast and his staff into furniture? Disney has a bad habit of having people do awful things to kids. One of the conditions of the curse is that it can only be broken if he finds a true love who can see past his form form before the last petal on the rose falls. Out of anger, the beast slashes through a portrait of himself when he was human with his claws. When Belle finds the portrait, the rips are pointing the opposite way to the way he ripped them. Rips aside, the portrait shouldn't exist in the first place because it shows him as an adult. Which Disney movie mistake was your favorite? Can you think of any we missed? Let us know in the comment section below, and remember to like, share, and subscribe for more great content. Don't forget to check out videos on our playlist. And while we're at it, the answer to the emoji quiz is...